The Watcher is a 7-episode thriller streaming on Netflix. It is starring Naomi Watts and Bobby Cannavale. And this show, I was so I first watched this show when I was quarantining from COVID, and that I think this is probably why I'm going to be a lot more lenient on this show than I probably should be, because it's a hell of a distraction. Like if you need like a good distraction, put this show on because uh, okay. What's The Watcher about? So this is another based on true events tale about a family that they buy a really gorgeous, huge manor of a house in this really sleepy kind of neighborhood. And shortly after moving in, they start getting these weird, kind of threatening letters sent anonymously in their mailbox. And suddenly, kind of like everybody in that kind of quirky, sleepy neighborhood town kind of becomes a suspect, because they're new in town, they don't know anybody, and like the letters are pretty invasive and threatening and weird. And they try to go to the sheriff with it, but the sheriff could care less, honestly. And um, yeah, so they kind of they hire some kid to like put an alarm system and cameras in their house. The cameras don't catch anything. A ferret dies. Neighbors die. Neighbors come back to life. um, it's, it's, the wife has this really kind of bitchy friend who is not really her friend, but she wants the house too. They piss off the sheriff. There's a private investigator who just starts casting blames and doubts just all over the place. There's the previous residents that lived in the house comes back, and he's like a meth head basically, and he's talking about how his kid was the neighbors were like in some kind of blood cult, and they tried to get the kid into the blood cult. It's all over the place. Oh, and by the way, it ends in I just made this shit all up. And I normally I try not to do any spoilery kind of stuff. I try to leave it like kind of vague. But who cares with this show? God, this show is just a mess. So oh, what do I like about it? Um, it starts off pretty solid, and the fact that it's based off of like a true event, like a family actually did buy a house, like a really big, kind of gorgeous house in a neighborhood somewhere, and they really did get letters, like these really weird and bizarre letters. I think like BuzzFeed did a thing on them. Mr. Ballin had a video on them as well, and so it's kind of a known story out there within the last few years. However, like when they take creative liberties, everything else, that's where it ends. Like that's kind of where like the true events and the show depart. Like they vastly depart because the family didn't move into the house. Like once they got the letters, they smartly did not move into the house, and there was no ferret. There was no private. Well, they did hire a private investigator, but like they didn't just make up a whole bunch of stuff. There weren't no like quirky neighbors that died or whatever. Yeah, it was none of that. There wasn't no guy in a dumbwaiter, so yeah, this it's man, this show. One good thing in here, that Mia Farrow is in here. She plays a kind of a bit part as this kind of weird kooky neighbor, as well as Terry Kinney, which I was shocked to see him in this. Like he's a man, he's a character actor that just doesn't get his due. He kind of always is under the radar, but I've been watching him since I was like a kid, man, and he's been in like so many good movies. He's always played these really solid parts, and he was fun in this. I guess he was fine in this. He was playing kind of like a grown, mentally challenged person, and so it was just. He was that basically. Yeah, it starts off really bizarre, and it starts off kind of like it draws your attention. Like it's really attention grabbing at the start. Naomi Watts, and yeah, Naomi Watts. I'm a huge fan of hers. I've been watching her for years as well. Mulholland Drive, To the Ring, and she was in the Twin Peaks, the second series that David Lynch did. She was pretty good in that, and a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, I really, she was good in this too. She was good in this. Bobby Cannavale was good in this, but nobody really had it. They weren't really doing that much. A lot of the drama that was provided is between them two, really. Bobby Cannavale plays this kind of husband I sort of kind of identify with, of wanting to move his family out of this apartment in New York City, and wants to get them in like a nice house, like to have a nice neighborhood. Like I totally identify with that. And he may have messed his credit up in the pursuit of doing that. I kind of identify with that. Again, they bring it to the sheriff, played by Christopher McDonald, who I've seen in numerous types of stuff too. He was kind of like this really aloof, kind of like nonchalant sheriff in this sleepy town. Nothing happens, so it's like, oh, weird letters. Oh, don't worry about it. Nothing crazy like that happens in this town, so we'll get it or whatever. But yeah, that is again, a ferret dies in this. I said Richard Nice. Um, some of the kooky neighbors, played by Richard Kind, who is a terrific kind of like. I see him in a bunch of comedies, like back in the '90s and stuff like that, right? Like a bunch of like family movies or like family comedies and stuff. So it was really cool seeing him in this too. But yeah, they like him and his wife are these like really kind of nosy, kooky neighbors. And when like the mystery was like really ramping up, like they died suddenly, although they were murdered suddenly, only for like 2 episodes later to come back in town and say, "Oh, that wasn't us. There were like two other couples that our son hired, or or lured to the house to murder for insurance money or something." And at that point, I'm just sitting there like, okay, this is just this is just garbage right now. All right, but okay, all right. It tries to go into like the it's so bad it's good territory, but I guess it kind of goes there. But to me, it didn't go crazy enough. It was just kind of like what are we doing? Why why are we doing this? Yeah, so they end up they never move out actually until like later on in the series. Even after they find like this dungeon in the basement and like a catacomb or something, like they must have seen Barbarian or something when they were writing this, maybe. But yeah, it's and they still didn't move. As you find a catacomb in a house that you just bought, yeah, it's time to move out. It's time to go. Like what? There's no, but who cares? There's no logic. There's no rhyme or reason for this, and it just spins more and more out of control. There's like this writing group that writes love letters to houses or something in this, and so they're like tracking down the guy who started that because he's the guy. It's just like, okay, this is dumb. And then the private investigator that they hired, who is also seemingly dying from cancer, and at the I think the last episode when she passes away, the daughter, they go to the funeral and everything, and like the daughter tells her, oh, you know what, she just made up the whole ending of the case just to make you feel better. So we never found out who the writer was of the letters, and he's just sitting there like, what? So you just wasted my time. So you just wasted 7 hours of my time, basically, is what you're saying. So I can understand if people are like really pissed at this because it just leads to nothing, right? But it's kind of fascinating to watch at the same time. But yeah, this is just straight garbage. The Watcher, 2 out of 5. I'm it only gets a 2 because it was kinda entertaining, and I was in quarantine, so I couldn't really do anything anyway. So, 2 out of 5, whatever, man.